I stood at the podium, trembling. Not from fear, but from the absence. The front row, meant for my family, was empty. They left. My parents, my own parents, walked out of my graduation to watch my brother's soccer match. As the crowd clapped for me, I felt hollow inside. Everyone smiled except me. That was the moment I realized I was never the main character in their story. I was just background noise. Have you ever reached your biggest milestone, only to realize the people who should be proudest never truly saw you? That was the day I stopped pretending I wasn't hurting. The applause rang out like thunder, echoing off the auditorium walls. I stood at the podium, gripping the edges tighter than necessary, forcing my lips into a practiced smile. Around me, hundreds of proud families beamed, capturing videos, wiping tears. Mine? Gone. I kept my eyes fixed on the front row. 3 reserved seats sat empty, abandoned sometime after the dean's opening remarks. I had seen them arrive, and I had seen them leave. They didn't even wait for my name. Claire Thompson, summa cum laude, the announcer had declared, and the room erupted. But their cheers couldn't fill the hollow inside me. I felt like a ghost floating through a moment that should have been mine. That's when it hit me. I wasn't the main character in their story. I never was. I was the side note, the subplot, the footnote they forgot to read. If you're thinking this is dramatic, ask yourself this. Have you ever looked out into a crowd, searching for the people who should be proudest of you, only to find no one? They were at Luke's soccer game. My younger brother had a playoff match, the semifinals of some regional tournament. Important, sure. But it wasn't national. It wasn't scholarship defining. It wasn't once in a lifetime. My graduation was. And yet, they left. After the ceremony, people came up to congratulate me. Professors shook my hand. Classmates hugged me. Someone said I was an inspiration. But all I could think about was how my mom probably screamed in the bleachers when Luke scored. I could see her face in my mind. Radiant, alive, filled with pride. She never looked at me like that. Back in my apartment that night, I didn't cry. Instead, I replayed the day in my head like a silent film. I zoomed in on the details. Dad checking his watch, Mom whispering something, and standing up mid-speech. The way my heart dropped when I caught the movement from the stage. It wasn't just today. Today was the climax. But the story started long before. Our family looked perfect from the outside. 2 parents, 2 kids, white picket fence, family portraits, every Christmas. Luke, the golden boy, athletic, charming, always smiling. Me, quiet, bookish, constantly chasing approval. I used to think it was just our dynamic. Some siblings are closer to one parent, others to the other. But over time, patterns became impossible to ignore. Growing up, I learned to shrink myself. When I got a 98 on a test, Dad would say, "That's good. But did Luke finish his practice on time?" When I was nominated for the school writing award, Mom said, "That's sweet, honey. But don't tell Luke he's already stressed about the championship." And birthdays? Luke got surprise parties. I got sorry we forgot dinners. I told myself I was imagining it. "Don't be dramatic," I whispered on loop. "You're just sensitive." But deep down, a part of me knew something wasn't right. Maybe you know that feeling too. That quiet suspicion that you don't matter as much as you should. The night after graduation, I dug out an old photo album. Most of the pages were filled with Luke's trophies, soccer jerseys, and beaming faces. Mine were fewer, less enthusiastic. My 5th grade spelling bee win got a blurry picture. Luke's 3rd-place ribbon from a swim meet had a full 2-page spread. Something in me snapped. I opened Mom's old laptop. It still had some family videos saved. One caught my eye. Claire Dance Recital 2009. My heart fluttered. I remembered that day. I had worked on that routine for weeks. I hit play. There I was, a little girl in a purple tutu, stepping onto the stage. I had barely lifted my arms when the camera jolted. "Look at Luke!" Dad's voice laughed off screen. The footage blurred, then centered on my brother, sitting in the audience, licking frosting off a cupcake. My dance never made it to film. I paused the video, stared at the screen. I wasn't angry, not yet, just numb. Something told me to check further, maybe to prove myself wrong, maybe to finally admit the truth. In Mom's old messages folder, one stood out, labeled Funny Convo with Jen. I clicked. It was a chat from years ago, when I was maybe 13. "She's so emotional," Mom had typed. "Claire always makes things harder than they need to be. Not like Luke. He just gets it. She's exhausting sometimes." I read the words 3 times. My chest tightened. It wasn't just in my head. It was real. They didn't see me. And when they did, I was too much. I didn't cry. I just closed the laptop, opened my phone, and typed into Google, "How to live without parental approval." After graduation, I threw myself into overdrive. No more questions, no more hoping. If love wasn't freely given, I'd earn it. I became the daughter every parent dreamed of. On paper, perfect GPA, multiple internships, debate team, volunteer coordinator. I wasn't living anymore. I was performing. I entered a national writing competition, a piece about invisible siblings in families. Irony wasn't lost on me. The essay poured out of me in one night, as if my soul had been waiting for permission to speak. It won first place. A producer from a local TV station invited me for a segment. My university put out a press release. Emails poured in. When I called home to tell them, Dad said, "That's nice, honey, but Luke sprained his ankle yesterday. Your mom and I are with him at urgent care. Poor kid can't walk. No, I'm proud of you. No, or we'll try to be there. Just Luke's ankle." The night of the awards ceremony, I stood alone backstage in a navy dress I'd bought secondhand. Everyone else had family cheering from the front row. When my name was called, I walked out to polite applause, accepted the plaque, smiled at the camera. Afterwards, a woman I didn't know approached me and hugged me tightly. "You have a gift," she whispered. "Your words matter." I broke, not loudly, not dramatically, but silently, as the tears spilled down my cheeks, and I clung to a stranger like a child, too tired to pretend anymore. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just let me cry. That was the moment I began to understand. I was dying inside, slowly, while trying to be someone they might finally acknowledge. That night, I didn't sleep. I drank too much wine in my tiny studio apartment and stared at the ceiling. My plaque lay on the floor beside me. My inbox was full of interview requests, and yet I felt empty. Around 2 a.m., I opened my phone camera. No makeup, messy bun, tears dried on my cheeks. "Hi," I said softly, staring at my own reflection. "My name is Claire. Today I won a national award for writing about being the forgotten child in a family. My parents didn't come. They never do. I spoke for 3 minutes. I told stories I had never told anyone. I didn't name names. I didn't scream. I just spoke," I said. "If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, you're not crazy. You're not ungrateful. You're just hurting." Then I posted it to TikTok, closed my phone, went to bed. The next morning, I woke to 300,000 views. By noon, it was over 1 million. Comments flooded in. I thought I was the only one. Same here. My brother was the golden child, too. You just said everything I've never had the courage to say. 3 million views by the end of the day. News outlets reached out. Psychology blogs reposted the video. It wasn't just a confession. It was a movement. Then came the backlash. Luke posted on Instagram a screenshot of my video with the caption, "When your sister sells family drama for likes. Sad." I stared at the post, reading the comments. His teammates chimed in. "Oof, she's reaching. Drama queen. Always knew she was weird." My phone buzzed again. A message from Mom. "I can't believe you'd air our dirty laundry like that. You've ruined this family for attention. Hope it was worth it." I turned my phone off, curled into a ball on the floor, sobbed until my chest ached. I didn't regret what I said, but I hated the pain it brought, hated that I still wanted them to understand, still needed their approval, even after exposing the truth. Hours passed. I finally picked up my phone, opened the app again. One new comment sat at the top, pinned by a follower. "I was Claire 10 years ago. Your voice gave me courage. Thank you." I read it twice, then again. Something shifted in me. Not healed, not fixed, but different. If I couldn't get love from them, maybe I could offer something to those who needed a voice. Maybe there were others like me. Too many of us pretending we're fine, when inside, we're screaming to be seen. And if no one ever told us we mattered, maybe we could remind each other. I packed everything I owned into the back seat of my car. 3 suitcases, a mattress roll, and 2 boxes of books. No photos, no souvenirs, no forwarding address. I left the city that raised me without telling anyone. No goodbyes, no explanations. Just silence, the same kind I had lived in for years. The city I moved to wasn't anything special. It was smaller, quieter, cheaper. But it was mine. No history clinging to the walls. No reminders of who I wasn't enough for. I found a tiny studio apartment above a bakery. The scent of cinnamon rolls greeted me every morning. It felt like the first place I'd ever been allowed to breathe. For weeks, I barely spoke to anyone. I worked a part-time job at a bookstore, kept my head down, and wrote. God, I wrote so much. Journals filled up like wildfire. Pages soaked in old wounds and fresh clarity. I started a blog, anonymous at first, just Daughter in the Corner. I shared bits of my story, careful, raw, but honest. People responded, quietly at first, a few comments, then emails, then long aching messages from strangers saying, "That's me, that's my life." It was the first time my voice felt like it mattered. One night I posted a piece titled, "The Unchosen Child." It wasn't angry. It wasn't even sad. It was soft, tired. Just a girl finally admitting she had been trying to win a game she was never invited to play. The post spread. Thousands read it. A week later, I got an email from a small publishing house. "Have you ever considered turning your story into a book?" I reread the message 10 times. My hands trembled. All I had ever wanted was to be heard. Not famous, not celebrated, just heard. I didn't say yes right away. I took a walk. No destination, no deadline. Just me, the wind, the sound of my own footsteps. It hit me then. How light I felt. I wasn't chasing anyone. I wasn't proving anything. I was just existing, for the first time. On my own terms. I stood by the river watching the current move beneath the bridge. The city lights flickered on the water, and I whispered out loud. It's not that I wasn't enough. They just didn't know how to love me. I said it again, louder. And for the first time in my life, I believed it. The next day I replied to the publisher. Yes, I'd like to try. In the weeks that followed, I joined a local writers' group. That's where I met Amara. She was in her 40s, sharp-tongued and soft-eyed. Her stories were laced with rage and wisdom. She told me about growing up invisible, surviving parents who used guilt like oxygen, and how she rebuilt herself from scratch. "You remind me of myself at 20, she said one day, after reading my chapter draft. "Except you're smarter. You're doing this earlier." She became my mentor, my mirror, my reminder that healing wasn't a straight line. With her help, I refined my voice, sharpened my message, and found a purpose bigger than my pain. We started an online community, Those We Left to Love Ourselves. It was a strange name, but it fit. We weren't orphans. We just had to walk away from families who never saw us. The group grew fast. Teenagers, adults, even elderly women joined. People who had stayed silent for decades finally spoke. We had weekly prompts, monthly video calls, shared playlists for sad days. It wasn't therapy. It was survival, dressed in softness and solidarity. Then, an email came from TEDx. They'd read my blog, seen the video. Someone had submitted my name. They wanted me to speak. The date was set. The topic. The cost of being invisible. When the day came, I stood backstage in a black suit, heart pounding, palms damp. The lights dimmed. My name was called. As I stepped onto the red circle, my eyes scanned the crowd. And there, in the back row, almost hidden in the shadows, was my mother. Her hair was pulled back, no makeup. She clutched a tissue in one hand, her eyes locked on me. I froze, just for a moment. Then I began. I told my story, not to accuse, not to shame, but to reveal. I spoke about love that feels like absence, about daughters who disappear quietly, about the quiet rebellion of choosing yourself. Halfway through, I saw her wipe her cheeks. At the end, the applause felt like thunder. But this time, I wasn't listening for anyone in particular. Not even her. As I walked off stage, my heart whispered, maybe, just maybe, this isn't the end. Maybe something can begin again. But this time, I set the terms. She waited for me outside the auditorium, standing near the back exit like someone who had wandered into the wrong life. Her hands were clenched in front of her, tissue crumpled tight, eyes red but guarded. We didn't hug. We didn't speak. We just started walking. There was a coffee shop down the block, nearly empty at that hour. We sat by the window. She ordered chamomile tea. I didn't order anything. For the first 5 minutes, silence was our language. I watched her fidget. She watched me breathe. Finally, she said, "I didn't know you were hurting that much." I didn't flinch. "Because I never told you, right?" She blinked. Maybe at my tone. Maybe at the absence of apology. "You always seemed so strong, so distant." I let the words land, let her try to make them make sense. Then I replied, "Being good at hiding pain isn't the same as not feeling it." She looked away. "I was overwhelmed. Luke had so many things going on. He needed us more." I nodded slowly. "And I didn't?" Her silence was confirmation enough. Then I asked the question I had never dared to let leave my throat. If I weren't Dad's daughter, if I had been someone else's child, would you have loved me more? Her head snapped toward me, but the answer didn't come. Instead, her lips parted, then closed. No words. Just that deep, haunted quiet. I didn't need her to say anything. I realized in that moment that I wasn't there for answers. I wasn't seeking closure. I was watching the final reel of a film that never gave me the ending I wanted. But I didn't need it anymore. I stood. "Thank you for coming today," I said softly. "But I think we're done here." she opened her mouth again. Maybe to apologize, maybe to defend herself. I didn't stay to find out. As I walked back to my apartment, I felt lighter. Not because the past was fixed, but because I finally stopped carrying its weight like proof of my own inadequacy. The next morning, I woke to a dozen missed calls. From my father, from Luke, from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Luke had gone live on Instagram the night before, calling me a traitor to the family, a narcissist using pain for profit. His followers cheered him on. Comments flooded my DMs, some kind, many vicious. By evening, I received a formal letter. My family was ending all financial support. No more rent, no more backup plan. I stared at the screen. No anger, just a dull, quiet throb behind my eyes. That night, I walked. No umbrella. Just rain soaking through my hoodie, my shoes, my bones. I ended up in a playground, the same kind I used to sit at as a kid, pretending to study while waiting for Dad to pick me up. Always late, always apologizing with a smile that never reached his eyes. I sat on the wet swing and whispered, "If I get straight A's, maybe he'll be proud." I whispered it again, like a ghost echoing an old chant. "If I get straight A's." And then I laughed, not from joy, from the absurdity of still wanting that pride after all this time. When I got home soaked and shivering, there was a new email in my inbox. Subject line, "Thank you." It read, "I watched your TEDx talk. My little sister has been struggling for years, trying to earn love from parents who only see her when she breaks. 2 days ago, she tried to end her life. I showed her your story. We cried together. She said, 'If she survived, maybe I can too. Thank you. You saved her.'" I sat with that email in my lap, hands shaking, throat tight. Not because I had saved someone, but because someone had seen me, the real me. I didn't need my family's approval, not if it cost me my voice, my peace, my soul. I finally understood. I wasn't meant to disappear to earn love. I was meant to exist, loudly, truthfully, even if it meant being disowned, because I'd rather be unloved for who I am than adored for who I'm not. The lecture hall wasn't big. Maybe 50 seats, give or take. Most were empty when I arrived, but by the time the clock struck 10, nearly all were full. I stood at the front, hands loose at my sides, wearing a navy blazer and jeans, no script, just a slide that read, "Family isn't always love." It was my first day as a part-time lecturer in family psychology. The department chair had found my blog, seen the TEDx talk, and offered me a class. At first, I hesitated. Teaching meant vulnerability. It meant being asked hard questions by young adults searching for their own truth. But something about standing in front of a room, telling others what I wish I'd known at 19, it felt right. I opened the class by writing one word on the board, belonging. Then I asked, "What does that word mean to you?" They were quiet at first. Then one girl raised her hand, "Feeling seen." Another said, "Safety." A third whispered, "Home," but not always the one you're born into. I smiled. This was where I was supposed to be. Outside the university, my life had taken a new shape too. The online community I'd started with Amara had grown into a real organization. We got funding. We launched local chapters. We hosted support groups for teens navigating parental neglect, emotional abuse, or just plain silence. I called it second roots, because sometimes healing meant planting new ones. We had mentors, coaches, book clubs, healing circles. It wasn't perfect. Some days it felt like stitching together broken glass. But it mattered. And for once I didn't feel like I was building it to prove anything. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was just contributing, offering the thing I never had. A place to be real. One evening after class, I checked my email. A subject, finished your book. It was from my father. I stared at the screen. For 10 full minutes, I didn't open it. Then I did. It was brief. 4 sentences. I read your book. I don't agree with everything. But I understand more now. You write well. There was no apology, no grand epiphany. Just those words. I closed the laptop. I didn't cry. Instead, I stood by the window of my apartment, watching the sun dip below the skyline. My hands weren't shaking. My chest wasn't tight. I wasn't hoping for more. I felt calm. That was new. For so long, I thought peace came after justice. That healing meant someone saying, "I'm sorry," and meaning it. But maybe real healing was being able to read his words and not let them decide my worth. Maybe power wasn't about what they finally said. It was about what I no longer needed them to say. I folded a piece of paper and wrote, "Thank you for reading." Then I mailed it. That was all. I didn't expect anything in return, because I no longer needed revenge. I needed to grow past what held me back. A month later, I received a letter from a high school in the same city Luke still lived in. It was from a student named Riley. She wrote, "We hosted a talk at our school last week. It was about favoritism in families, inspired by your story. Your brother Luke helped organize it. He shared how watching you speak made him realize the ways he'd been complicit. He said, 'My sister taught me that love doesn't mean silence.'" I reread the letter over and over. There was a photo attached. Luke standing beside a poster that read, "Be the voice your sister needed." He looked older, humbled. My heart didn't burst. It didn't ache. It just softened. Weeks later, we met at a park halfway between our cities. He brought coffee. I brought 1,000 unspoken questions. "I was an ass," he said, no preamble. "For years." I said nothing. He looked at me. "You didn't deserve it. Any of it." I nodded. "No, I didn't." He swallowed. "I'm sorry, Claire." This time I did cry. We walked, talked, didn't rush. Before he left, he handed me a small envelope. "From Mom," he said. "She asked me to give it to you." Inside was a letter, her handwriting, no email, no text, just ink on paper. "I watched your TEDx talk 5 times, it began. "The first time, I wanted to scream. The second time, I wanted to crawl into a hole. The third, I cried. The fourth, I listened. The fifth, I finally heard you." She wrote about her regrets, about the blind spots she now saw. She didn't excuse herself. She didn't beg. She just told the truth. "I failed you," she ended, "but if you'll have me, I'd like to learn how to do better." I clutched the letter to my chest, breath caught between hope and hesitation. A month later, we met. It wasn't dramatic, no big reunion, just a coffee shop, 2 cups of tea, a long, careful hug. She cried. I let her. I didn't forgive everything that day, but I opened the door. We started small, monthly calls, shared recipes, book recommendations. There were awkward pauses, slips into old habits, but there was effort now. Real effort. One Sunday, I invited her to a youth event at Second Roots. She came, sat in the back, listened to kids speak their truths. Afterward, she said, "They sound like you used to, only now. They have you." That night, I stood in my bedroom, staring at an old photo on the wall. Me at 6, in a purple tutu, blurry and off-center. I didn't hate that girl anymore. I wanted to hold her hand and say, "It gets better. You get better." And I'd mean it. We weren't a family yet, not fully, but for the first time, we were trying. The first family therapy session was quiet. No explosions, no tears. Just 3 people sitting on the edge of their chairs, unsure if they were here to fix something or finally name it broken. The therapist asked us to go around and share one word for how we felt. Willing, I said. Confused, my dad muttered. My mother whispered, ashamed. That was the beginning. We didn't meet every week. Sometimes months passed between sessions. But we kept showing up. My mom joined a support group for parents, learning how to rebuild trust with adult children. She listened more than she spoke. She started sending me articles, not to educate me, but to say, I'm trying. I didn't forgive easily, and I didn't forgive everything, but I forgave enough to breathe around them again. I made my boundaries clear. No more pretending everything was fine. No more asking me to downplay my pain to keep the peace. No more rewriting history. I want us to be something new, I told them. Not what we were, but maybe something better. They agreed. At Second Roots, the youth center buzzed with life. Teenagers arrived in waves, some laughing, others withdrawn. They painted, wrote, shared poems, sat in silence, danced when the music felt right. One afternoon, I sat beside a girl who rarely spoke. She stared at her shoes as others read their journal entries aloud. When I asked if she wanted to share, she shook her head. But as I stood to leave, she tugged at my sleeve. Miss Claire? I turned. She looked up and said, You're the first adult I've seen who didn't give up. I froze. Not because I was surprised, but because I suddenly understood how much that mattered. Not giving up wasn't a slogan. It was a lifeline. I'm glad I didn't, I said. That night, as I locked the center's doors, I felt a quiet strength settle into my bones. Not loud, not dramatic, but unshakable. I had been born again. Not through forgiveness or reconciliation, but through the courage to stay soft in a world that had hardened me. I went home and opened the first box of advanced copies. My book, The Day They Left My Graduation, sat in my hands, the cover a mix of deep purple and gold. It felt surreal, realer than the diploma I once thought would earn me love. In the weeks that followed, I was invited to speak at a global mental health conference. The stage was massive, the audience stretched endlessly. But I wasn't nervous. I told my story. Not as a victim, not as a survivor, but as a builder. A woman who had stitched herself together with truth and chosen to live loudly in her own name. Afterward, a line of people waited to talk. Some thanked me. Others just hugged me. One woman, in her 60s, whispered, You made me want to try again with my daughter. That night, I stood in my bathroom, looking at my reflection. I didn't flinch. I didn't rearrange my hair. I didn't look away. It was the first time I had stood there and not hated the girls staring back. I reached out, fingers resting on the glass. You made it, I said. Weeks later, I visited the campus where it all began. The auditorium looked the same. The podium, the rows of seats, the ghosts of who I used to be. I walked the same path I'd taken the day they left. Near the library, I spotted a girl curled up on a bench, wiping her eyes. Her mother was on the phone nearby, voice sharp, accusing. I didn't need context. I sat down beside the girl. She looked startled, then wary. I smiled. Tough day? She nodded. I hesitated, then said, I know what it's like. When the people you want most to understand you just don't. She sniffled. They never listen. I know, I whispered, but you're still here. That counts. She looked at me. Do you think it gets better? I didn't lie. I think you get stronger. We sat there in silence, 2 girls, one younger, one older, on opposite ends of the same wound. I didn't offer advice. I offered presence. And sometimes that's more than enough.